Perfect.
Madam Chair and members, Barry Broad on behalf of the Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District, which is the wastewater agency for this area. We are in support of the bill, and we appreciate its effort to balance the state's needs, which are complex and varied. I also would like to say that I think the politics on this may be changing very rapidly in a drought year, and by November maybe the voters will be much more receptive than conventional wisdom has it of a more expansive water bond. There's two principles that we'd like to emphasize that we think should be in this bill or any bill. The first is that what limited money may be available for projects should satisfy multiple goals. In other words, and those should be given priority. So things that may do water recycling and at the same time restore groundwater, those should be the highest priority for funding. So we get essentially the biggest bang for our buck. Finally, in a Delta-specific way, we want the Delta Conservancy to be the entity that distributes that money and makes those decisions in this area. So with that, I urge your aye vote. I also represent the Teamsters Union, and of course they want to see a water bond really badly. Thank you.
Good morning, Paige Brokaw on behalf of the Monterey Bay Aquarium in support of SB 848. There are a lot of strong provisions in this bill, but we are especially grateful to see the funding going to the state conservancies, including the Ocean Protection Council as the bill is proposed to be amended. We encourage your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Kathy Christian on behalf of two counties whose supervisors would dearly have loved to be here, but Tuesday is a Board of Supervisors meeting day, Contra Costa County and Marin County. Marin County, like some of the counties on the other counties on the Central Coast, 75% of its water comes from the Mount Tamalpais and Western Marin Hills watershed. So protecting watershed and devoting resources to other areas of the state for water self-sufficiency are greatly appreciated, and Marin is very much in support of the bond. On behalf of Contra Costa, obviously one of the Delta counties has spent a lot of time on this issue. We hope that the committee can separate the fight over conveyance and BDCP, which of course Contra Costa has many serious problems with, because we believe that is a very long-term issue. There is a short-term need for a water bond now to deal with the infrastructure needs around the state, and in particular to protect and restore the Delta, upon which 4 million people who live in the Delta counties depend. And so for that reason, we also join others in urging that the conservancies, which do, by the way, bill support statewide for a bond because they do take care of and protect the area that they're responsible for, that the Delta projects be managed through the Delta Conservancy. We think that sometimes there's some reluctance to do that at the beginning, but conservancies have proven that they can build the trust of the local communities and develop support for the projects that need to be done. So with that, Contra Costa does support the bill, and we wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
Sylvia Solis Shaw here on behalf of 3 counties today. First, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Solano County in support of the measure, we support the author's commitment to a comprehensive water management strategy that addresses statewide issues and Delta issues. We appreciate the increase in funding that addresses the water quality projects in the Delta and the recognition of the importance that these funds be appropriated by the Delta Conservancy. They thank Senator Wolk for her leadership. In addition, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of San Joaquin County, they view the substantial and direct funding to the Delta Conservancy as an important feature of the water bond and believe the bond is strengthened by increased funding for IRWIMP plans in the Central Valley. This is a substantial opportunity for conjunctive use groundwater recharge projects that we believe have excellent cost-benefit outcomes, and the board also supports including funding for storage in the bond. And thirdly, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Sonoma County, I'll just echo the comments and support on behalf of the Water Bond Coalition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Zaragoza on behalf of the California Latino Water Coalition. We are here today to, we must respectfully oppose SB 848. We think it falls short of the co-equal goals that were established And to echo some of the comments of my colleagues in the labor world, this is about jobs as well. It's not only the jobs that are going to be created in building new storage, which we think falls short in this bill, but also to sustain the jobs throughout the state that we already have. We have areas that we represent that still have record unemployment in the Central Valley. They're 70-80% Latino. And while it's an agricultural-based community, they are trying to diversify, and without a reliable water system, we simply cannot do that. This bill also is missing the continuous appropriation, which we think is absolutely necessary for those storage funds to be adequately funded. However, we do thank the senator for the dollars within the IRWIMP portion. We think that was very good. So for all those reasons, we must oppose the bill, but we look forward to continue working on this.
Great.
Good afternoon. Steve Cruz on behalf of California Home Builders, as represented by the California Building Industry Association. So first, I'd associate myself with a number of comments made earlier with respect to 848 and it not adequately funding investments in water infrastructure, particularly Delta's sustainability and the lack of a continuous appropriation. CBIA is also concerned with provisions in Chapter 5 and new funding criteria for water supply enhancement projects. Specifically, 848 includes a number of new requirements related to the IRWIM funding requirements for water budgets and ensuring that IRWIMs are consistent with state policy regarding reduced future reliance on the Delta would impose new significant hurdles for pursuing funding on top of already cumbersome and lengthy process. Additionally, 848 includes certification for urban water management plans and concerned about any delays.
That's current law.
Any delays in processing some of the IRWIM funding in particular. So I think overall, the bond is a good start. I think we want to make sure, considering that for home builders and new development, that we have to look through the lens of 221 and SB 610, that we have to demonstrate, the water agencies have to demonstrate long-term water supplies. And so we want to make sure those sections adequately provide not just the funding, but the flexibility and to ensure that they can meet the water demand test. So for those reasons, we're opposed unless amended at the moment. So thank you.
Paul? Oh, behind you? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Chris Maurer. I'm here on behalf of the California Council of Land Trusts, representing 120 land trusts throughout the state. I want to start off by appreciate all the hard work that Senator Wolk has put into this measure. CCLT has not taken a formal position on the measure as of yet, but once the bill is amended and back in print, we have an upcoming Government Relations Committee, and we'll be debating it more thoroughly at that time. I have been directed to point out that CCLT is looking at SB 848 and other water bond measures that might be considered this year with a set of guiding principles in mind as they apply to conservation investments, including the following as we believe they are particularly applicable today. Number one, substantial and significant future conservation investments must directly benefit urban and underserved communities. The vast majority of Californians live in urban areas and urban clusters, and there are very large unmet needs in this area. Number two, the conservation of California's agricultural lands call for greater direct conservation investments if we are to continue to have the nation's most productive ag land base. With the loss of the Williamson Act, water shortages, and the additional development, we may be at a tipping point for future of agricultural lands in this state and the many benefits they provide. And number three, as we consider public funding measures for a new era and a new generation, we need to ensure that such measures have built into them improved public accountability that follows the funded project or activity throughout its entire lifespan, whether it's project development, implementation, monitoring, or measuring progress against priorities. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, or good morning, almost afternoon, Madam Chair. Paul Mason with Pacific Forest Trust. And we also want to thank the author for moving forward on the bond and the staff, your staff, for all the work that you put into these changes. I want to just focus in on highlighting where our most key watersheds in the state are for overall water supply. The map that the Sergeant just distributed, those base layers identifying key watersheds came from CAL FIRE's mapping Department FRAP, and we've overlaid there an area we generally describe as the Klamath Cascade, which includes the northern Sierra and Cascades up through Mount Shasta, as sort of an area that provides a great deal of California's water. It's the upper headwaters for the Sacramento River. And I highlight that because It is of such significance to California's water supply. Of 80% of the water that comes into the Delta originates in this area, that I think it deserves a little bit more attention in the distribution of funds for watershed conservation. We very much appreciate the significant commitment to protecting the areas where water comes from. But looking at this map, it really highlights that the Sierra Nevada, the Cascades up around through Mount Shasta, are extremely important and may deserve, in fact we believe very much do deserve, a little bit more of an appropriation than is currently reflected for the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the Wildlife Conservation Board. And particularly the Wildlife Conservation Board is the only entity with the ability to work statewide and pick up a lot of those areas that don't otherwise have a conservancy. So if you happen to be working on a project near Ontario or Visalia or San Bernardino, these areas don't have a regional conservancy, so you would look to the Wildlife Conservation Board for any sort of watershed conservation activities or river parkway opportunities in those areas. So just highlighting that, we also submitted a letter, but thank you very much for the work on this bond thus far.
Thank you. Well, Senator Jackson, Senator Monning, I noticed you paying attention to that. We did add with the conservancies $215 million to the Wildlife Conservation Board that hadn't been in the original draft of the bill, in recognition of not every area has conservancies. I'm not sure the order here. Okay, Amy.
Amy Lethbridge from the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. The MRCA is a joint powers authority of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the Conejo Valley Recreation and Park District, and the Rancho Simi Valley Park District, serving the greater Los Angeles area. We support SB 848 and again want to thank Senator Wolk, Senator Pavley, and the committee for all your good work and all your future work. We're especially pleased with the recent amendments to the measure which increase the amounts of fundings for state conservancies and designate allocations to each, although we too would like to revisit the levels of allocation. Further, we're pleased to see the amendments allocating money for a competitive program to watershed and urban river enhancement projects in urban watersheds, but we're concerned that current language gives no guarantee that critical priorities such as the Los Angeles River can be funded under the language as proposed. Revitalization of the Los Angeles River is a top priority for many communities and interest groups in our region, and returning the river to a more natural state would bring a multitude of benefits. Of utmost importance is the ability to capture water and increase the region's groundwater availability, thus reducing the need to convey water from the Delta. In the coming months, we would also like the author to consider revisiting the definition of disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged communities in the measure, which uses income as the sole indicator of a community's disadvantage. Low-income communities are not always the same places suffering from polluted water bodies or threats to groundwater. We recommend that SB 848 be amended to include additional indicators defining disadvantaged communities, like multiple factors in addition to income, in order to target underserved communities in areas with the greatest water needs. We are committed to implementing green solutions that achieve watershed health for Greater Los Angeles, and equally committed to working with all of you for the passage of a good state water bond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you may want to submit the disadvantaged community language to the EQ committee, who will be addressing that next week.
I certainly will.
In the back, yes.
Thank you. Good morning. Chuck Mills with California Relief. Like many of my colleagues, we do not have a formal position on SB 848 as being presented in committee today, though we absolutely support the Senator's efforts to replace the fatally flawed bond that is currently slated for the November 2014 ballot with a smaller, more equitable measure that speaks to the very laudable goals to restore the Delta and bring better water quality to disadvantaged communities. One way to accomplish the latter is to ensure there is adequate funding to support our state's urban watersheds, which, as the Chair noted earlier, can promote groundwater recharge, treat runoff, and provide for water reuse. While this version of SB 848 does provide significant funding for these purposes, the measure proposes create a new program through the Resources Agency to carry out this objective, rather than utilizing existing statewide programs that have demonstrated records of success in supporting urban watersheds that include the Urban Streams Restoration Program, River Parkway Act, and Urban Forestry Act. Two of these programs were included in the previous iteration of SB 848, and the third is a priority for multiple on-the-ground groups working to restore and protect our urban watersheds through green infrastructure improvements. We're currently working with the Trust for Public Land, California Urban Streams Partnership on a consensus position to this section that we hope to discuss with the author in the coming week, which can move us to support. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Good morning. Rich Mateus with California Farm Bureau Federation. We represent 31,000 farmers in virtually every county of the state. Of course, the current crisis has been a significant challenge for our membership and has put some challenges on those communities that are so heavily dependent on agriculture to drive their economies. There was mention earlier about the jobs that are at risk here or the jobs that can be created here, and we think that should be of utmost attention. We support the current water bond that's on the ballot. And one of the main reasons we do so is because we think there are sufficient dollars in that bond for storage. We think new storage is very important, and the continuous appropriation of those dollars we also think is important. We do understand that we're going to need some modifications in that bond to get something that's palatable, and so are willing to work with the Senator, and we appreciate her bringing this bill forward so we have an opportunity to have these conversations to develop a bond that works for everybody and provides real new sources of water. We just echo the comments of the Association of California Water Agencies and also Mr. Curtin. Our views are consistent with theirs and look forward to the opportunity to work with you all. We have submitted comments in writing as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Rico Mastrodonato with the Trust for Public Land. I want to thank Senator Walk for her substantial commitment to watershed and protection and ecosystem improvement reflected in Senate Bill 848. I do agree with the comments from Pacific Forest Trust, given where the rain falls in the state, and we do appreciate the $215 million in the bond for the Wildlife Conservation Board, but we think that there could be more resources for the WCB to work in areas of the state that are not covered by a regional conservancy. We also want to thank Senator Walk and frankly are quite excited for her commitment to stormwater capture and water recycling and reuse. As you mentioned, Senator Pavley, we squander an incredible amount of rainwater, particularly in densely populated areas. We think that investing in green infrastructure, permeable surfaces that capture this water brings a multitude of co-benefits, including environmental benefits, human health, economic, etc. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lori Chin. Today,
That's okay. Go ahead.
Real quick. I'm here on behalf of PolicyLink. PolicyLink supports SB 848 and hopes that the author will work with us to include language that gives additional priority to projects that expand access to jobs and workforce development opportunities for disadvantaged communities near the projects. Thank you.
In the back?
Good morning. Is this on? Yeah.
Yes.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Connie Galippi. I'm with the California Urban Forest Council. Just wanted to thank Senator Walk and the members, Chair and members of the committee. We are very supportive of looking at a fresh look at the bond as well, and also the inclusion of stormwater funding in Chapter 5. Really important issue, and I would like to just echo the comments made by the gentleman from the Trust for Public Land. We also are very supportive of the funding in Chapter 7 for watershed and ecosystem improvements. It's a very critical component of taking a comprehensive approach to the water issues in this state. We specifically support the $250 million for multi-benefit and watershed and urban rivers projects, but would also like to echo the comments from the gentleman from California Relief in the sense that there are existing programs and agencies that are established for those purposes that he mentioned: river parkways, urban streams, urban forestry, among others. So we'd like you to consider those for that funding, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Good morning. My name is Crystal Jacobson. I'm with the County of Placer. And Placer County has a diversity of water interests, including water conservation, flood control, water quality, habitat conservation, and power generation. I want to point out that we are in support of many of the bond-funded programs of this bill that can help fund our diversity of interests, including funding for the state conservancies, 2 of which are in Placer County, as well as the Wildlife Conservation Board and other programs. On that note, we would support additional funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board. Their funding programs are particularly important to Placer County for watershed-level conservation and restoration efforts that will be implemented through our Natural Community Conservation Plan and other conservation initiatives. Finally, we would like to point out that the language supporting NCCPs, Natural Community Conservation Plans, and regional HCPs, Habitat Conservation Plans, is notably absent from the bill. These conservation programs are essential by helping to provide good water quality, watershed level conservation and restoration, flood control, floodplain conservation, and adaptability to climate change. So with that, again, Placer County is in support of the bill, and we wish you success with it, and we look forward to implementing many projects from any new funding that would come of it. Thank you.
Good morning, Steve Wallach on behalf of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. The board has endorsed the priorities expressed by the Water Bond Coalition and urges your support for the bill.
Thank you.
Good morning. Elisa Noble, representing the California Association of Resource Conservation Districts and the 98 resource conservation districts throughout the state. Resource conservation districts are non-regulatory special districts with local boards who are uniquely situated to implement projects with landowners, local governments, and state agencies that achieve common natural resource management goals, including increased water supplies. For these reasons, we support SB 848 and thank Senator Wolk for her leadership on the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
Madam Chair, members, Ed Manning on behalf of Mojave Water Agency, which is a state water project contractor in San Bernardino County, Western Municipal Water District, which is a MET member agency in Riverside County, and Westlands Water District, which is a CVP contractor in the Central Valley. Our clients opposed the bill at this time. We think it's important to look back at the construct of the 2009 bond that's currently on the ballot. When we did that bill and the Delta bill, it was like playing whack-a-mole, and when you change one thing, something else popped out somewhere else. And so even though there's concern about the dollar amount in the Cogdill bond, we got the two-thirds vote with the construct of that bond. So I think it's important to remember that it had a fine balance. It funded storage with a continuous appropriation. It also had watershed money. It had dedicated chapters for groundwater cleanup and recycling, which are not in this bond. It did not have funding for stormwater, which is in this bond. So, for example, on the stormwater funding, it's important, but if you have a groundwater basin that's contaminated and there's not sufficient money for cleaning it up, then you're not going to be able to store the stormwater that you gather potentially. So we think those priorities have to be revisited and dedicated chapters, regardless of the funding amount, belong in. Second, there's significant policy changes in this bond from the Cogdill bond, which are problematic. The reduced reliability on future water supply language that was so closely negotiated in 2009 is not replicated in this bond as written then. There's language in here about reduced imports, and reduced imports is not specific to the Delta A, and B is not the same language we negotiated. So it creates new standards that I think Mr. Vargas correctly raised.
And with that, Ed, I'm cutting you off, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
First of many, right? Hearings.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning. Tasha Newman here on behalf of the Big Sur Land Trust, the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, as well as the Peninsula Open Space Trust. We are here in support of SB 848, and in particular, we are very supportive of Chapter 7, including the increased funding for state conservancies, as well as inclusion of funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board. Both the Coastal Conservancy and WCB are key partners along the Central Coast for watershed protection and restoration, so we are very supportive of that funding within the bill, and we will look forward to working with you guys as you move through the process. Thank you.
Senator Manning shaking his head in agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attendance. In the back.
Hello, I'm Mark Stanley, the Executive Officer of the Watershed Conservation Authority. It's a joint powers authority between the San Gabriel and Lower Los Angeles Rivers and Mountains Conservancy and the Los Angeles County Flood Control District. We echo comments in support of the conservancies with one question that we ask that you take a look at the RMC's allocation in support of its getting its fair share of funding, giving the area that it serves of such a area with such high population density. The RMC has provided over $94 million in past bond funds to local agencies and nonprofits and profits, implementing over 157 projects within its territory. Given the area's population base, the vast percentage of projects are located in low-income disadvantaged communities, as clearly outlined in the bill as one of its needs. In fact, 19% of the population living in urban DAC areas are located within the RMC's territory. That represents approximately 1.9 million people. The RMC was created to serve the needs of the truly urbanized area. Over 68 cities, over 20 unincorporated areas throughout Southern California. That's a population of over 4.8 million people, or 13% of the state's population live within the territory of the RMC. We are very encouraged by the recognition of the Conservancy's in this bill and its vital roles that they have played in providing multi-benefits projects to restore our water quality and increase our water supply.
And with that, I'm going to have to cut you off. Your 2 minutes is up. Thank you very much.
Catherine Phillips, Sierra Club, California. First, Senator Pavley, I'd like to thank you for your opening remarks. I think that set a very good tone and underscores the opportunity that we have to rethink how we address our water supply issues in California. And I want to thank Senator Wolk for her bill because it also reflects that approach. It reflects that we need to be not tied to something that we would have done in the 60s, but looking forward and considering the changing climate, both the changing economic climate, but also the changing climate from a climate change perspective. One of the things I think that Senator Hueso raised is that there's going to be a need to get the bond through with the public. And the public is going to require accountability. And the way to get to that accountability is to make sure that there's some oversight on any funding. And one of the most important aspects of this bond, as it's proposed in SB 848, is the accountability that will be allowed by removing the continuous appropriation element that was in the previous bond. So I want to underscore what you've already heard some other folks say, in that we like the fact that this one does not have a continuous appropriation for storage projects, and that there will be the guidelines are adequate to ensure that the most cost-effective and smartest and environmentally friendly storage projects will have a fair playing field. Thank you.